Welcome to Your Property Podcasts. I'm your host, Lyons, co-founder of Your Property Network. In today's episode, I'm pleased to be joined by another real UK property investor talking through their real deals. And today I'm joined by Markus Zeller. Markus comes from a corporate career. He is a chief financial officer in a pharmaceutical company, and he does property on the side. Now, Markus has specialised in flipping properties for profit. So in this in-depth interview, we talk through how he finds deals, how he assesses them, how he funds flipping properties for profit, and how he makes sure that each project is delivered on time, on budget, and puts money in the bank. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this in-depth interview with another real UK property investor. This isn't Instagram influencers stood in front of a Lamborghini. These are real people doing real deals. And if you want to take your learning to the next level, check out the YPN hub at yourpropotynetwork.co.uk for tools, resources, downloads, and more property inspiration and information designed at helping you make smarter decisions when it comes to property investing. Today, I'm joined by Markus. Hey, Markus. Thank you for joining me today. Markus, you kind of got in touch with us via Susie Cole, who we've done loads of work with before in the past. She's great. I'm a massive fan of hers. She only lives down the road from me. And I know understand that you've been working with her to kind of change your property business and kind of take it to the next level. But let's start kind of life pre-property, if that's okay, because you come from corporate life. So tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are and what you do.
Okay. So I'm actually a finance guy through and through. I did the usual corporate type career. Got in at a junior level and worked for a number of years in various companies, different levels, climbed the ladder a little bit. Ended up as most recently as a CFO for a pharmaceutical business, and then and started property investing as a hobby, sort of on the side, typical accidental landlord to start with, but always enjoyed the physical creation type aspect of property than what I was doing, Excel spreadsheets and numbers. And it's not too it's not too dissimilar. Still do Excel sheets and numbers to work out deals. So I think, that's life pre now. And now I'm not one of these guys who wants to retire in a couple of properties and then retire. I want to create a business out of it. And that's why I also seeked out the help from Susie or from Susanna to really set this up properly and create a business. And then we'll start small, and then we'll scale over time. And if you do it properly, I learned there's many aspects. You need to look at not only the deal, compliance and health and safety and all these sort of things. And that's why I'm here now. I did a couple of deals and et cetera, et cetera.
So how has kind of been setting the business up, running it alongside a kind of a very busy corporate, high level, and I'm sure at times stressful job? How do you manage to kind of compartmentalize your time and say, well, this is Markus, the property guy, and this is Markus, the CFO, and how do you go about juggling the two things?
For me, it was simple, just allocating time. So I have as long as I had my job and started doing it, I assigned certain times. So I'm an early starter. So I always did 1 or 2 hours in the morning before meetings and everyone started working, and then also sometimes in the after work. And Saturdays and over weekends, most probably another 2-3 hours, but very dedicated. Always Saturday morning, Sunday morning before my daughter gets up. So very simple, allocating time, sticking to it.
And so when you were kind of developing a plan for the business and growing the business, what does that look like? Is that, okay, I have X number of resources in terms of time and money now to grow this thing. And we both know, and definitely with your CFO hat on, it's very easy to run out of money very quickly in property. So
yeah.
What did the sort of game plan look like over the first, let's say 6, 12 months or 18 months? And then what's the bigger picture look like longer term?
So the initial was for me, I started with an Excel spreadsheet in modeling what type of deals do I want to do. And with the money I have, how many can I do? Because of course there's many variables in projects. Is how much you spend on them, but also when you get them, how quickly you sell them, how long do you stay in the deal. So I did a couple of scenarios and worked out. I can do how many deals I can do, and then also starting to build relationships and getting into the market. So with agents, that also takes time. So naturally, and I had this discussion actually with Susie the other day, is sometimes I feel like I'm too slow or was too slow at the beginning, but I don't think that's the case. It's like getting a boat or a car that is from the standstill first moving. It takes time and effort, and sometimes you don't move very far, but that's a process you have to go through. And now we started moving, and now it's about accelerating or moving faster and maybe jumping to a bigger car, if I stay with that analogy. And that's sort of then the next phase. And now we started also working, see how does it make sense to attract capital, from investors. I have some investors already to facilitate that acceleration.
Okay, and you mentioned about flipping properties. Quite often people will start out kind of flipping properties to build capital, maybe with a view to kind of then investing that in, I guess, kind of very stable, very reliable assets that will churn away a kind of more passive income. Is that the kind of longer term plan after kind of creating, growing the capital? Or do you see yourself as a sort of property trader more than, someone who's going to hold property long term?
No, that's exactly the first one you mentioned. That's exactly the idea, to build that capital and then also start holding assets. But I don't want to do what I decided after doing it initially, sort of one by one. That's also very slow, right? So I'm now doing the flipping, building and then I want to go straight, when I hold, straight into kind of more bigger blocks, or even buy little portfolios, restructure them, and then hold them on for longer term. So a little bit same result, but maybe a slightly different way.
Okay, brilliant. I'd like to talk about the kind of holding properties a little bit later on, because I would love to get your take on, as a finance guy, what constitutes a good deal there, what constitutes a good return on investment. But maybe we can come back to that, because when we were speaking offline, I thought it was really interesting that you believe there's a sweet spot in terms of kind of flip deals. And sometimes when we're talking about buy-to-let, we can say buy-to-lets can be quite forgiving, compared to flip deals, and a lower entry point into the market can mitigate risk a little bit in terms of buy-to-let. So we might concentrate on the very low value properties.
But you were saying, well, actually, when it comes to flipping, it's not quite the case, though, is it? There's a sweet spot, because we may not get the return that we're looking for on those very, very low value deals. Could you just talk through your thoughts on that?
So the component for me is always also the time component, right? So when people talk about returns, there's always percentages thrown around, right? But these tend to be just the annual percentage, right? I made that much profit, and I made, I don't know, 5,000 profit. Let's say that's a bit low. 20,000 profit, and it cost me 100,000, right? 20%. Now, but if that took you 2 years to get there, then it's 10% a year, right? So that's why I'm also saying, if you can get like 20%, a 10% deal, but you do it in 3 months or 4 months, right? Then if you do 2 of them, you also make, if it's 100,000, you make twice 10,000, and you also have a year 20%. So I sometimes feel people don't take too much into account also the time component of projects. Of course, there's more effort. If I do 2 small projects, I literally spend more time than if I do 1 bigger deal, because I have to twice deal with British Gas or the energy suppliers. But that I'm not worried at the moment about it, because even if you can do that, if you have system and processes and you do, I don't know, you do them on a conveyor belt, then even that can be interesting, right? Because you're basically creating almost every month a little deal, every month 10,000, right? So you can also create that. It's a different take. I prefer also bigger deals just from an effort perspective, but from a cash flow management, it can be also interesting, because money comes quickly in and out, right? So it's almost like you can do big deals and manage your cash flow a little bit with small deals, right? Quick in and out. So it's and the more deals you have, of course, the more you can manage that cash flow. And to manage that cash flow is quite important, because at the end of the day, there's a famous concept, right? The quicker money moves, the more profit you make. So.
And you also mentioned that if we're doing a kind of lower value project as well, and it needs something spending on it which we hadn't foreseen, it needs a roof repair, and that's whatever, $5,000, for instance. On a low value property, let's say it's a 50 or 60,000 pound property, that eats in really significantly into your profit margin, whereas on a bigger deal that can be absorbed a little bit more, because the costs are going to be broadly similar. So is that another reason you're kind of concentrating on these not really high value properties, but I guess this kind of sweet spot between certainty of speed in moving and not having one thing go wrong. A boiler needs replacing, and that's 30% of your profit margin, I guess.
Absolutely, because that's I call it the risk of a small project, right? Is exactly that if 20% is 20,000, it can disappear quick. So that's why the risk assessment of a project for me is also a very important component. And that risk assessment on a big deal is more elaborate and more difficult, not more difficult, just more elaborate than on a small deal. But you shouldn't also underestimate the small deals because of that effect. So and it comes with experience as well, right? Once you've done a few deals and viewings, you look at a boiler and say, and I love when then agents say, yeah, but it was serviced. It was serviced last year and so on. Yes, but it's still 30 years old, right? It's not, it might be service, but to sell it on, it can anyway break down the next day. So that's then the other thing, and especially when you get into as a new investor, you don't have a lot of money. You invest very far away because in the north it's cheaper, and you go for these low value deals. You expose yourself also to that risk, right? That profit evaporates quite quickly, and also you can't be there as often and check on builders. So I also think at a very early stage, I was just also taken for a ride sometimes, and things were more costly than they should have been. So that's the other thing. I think be very, especially at the beginning, don't get carried away, get emotionally involved with a property. Try to make it something you would live in, and almost certain you will end up overdeveloping it. In the small ones, it's very important to know, I buy it from a certain clientele of vendors, and I will sell it to a similar clientele. And you need to refer to that customer group. And if you spend more, you spend your profit.
And being a numbers guy, do you think it's been easier for you to kind of avoid that buying with the heart or renovating, refurbishing with the heart, to say, do you know what, I'm going to be ruthless. I'm developing it for this market. This is exactly what they want. I'm not going to make this something that I want.
No, because then you sometimes think, I put a better kitchen in, right? So I get more money. No, that's actually not the case. It's like people in that clientele, they're looking for a certain. They will take it. Of course, anyone will take a designer kitchen if he gets him one. But a 2-bed flat in this area costs that much. That's it.
Okay, and have you found yourself being dragged into that on occasion as well?
It took me a while to get that discipline to stop and say, this is, there is not a Howden's kitchen going in, there is a B&Q kitchen going in, because that's, it's actually not that bad anyway, and it will look just as nice and as functional and as good, and I spent probably 20% less. So.
Okay, great. You mentioned kind of it takes time to build those relationships with agents, and I wondered if you could talk through what that looks like and how you go about kind of building that trust, and also how useful they have been when you're assessing a deal to sell on. Are you working with agents closely to understand, well, what does the end market want? What do they require? These are the kind of prices we're looking at. Or have you found them kind of like leading you up the path a little bit and perhaps over-promising what a property might be worth and how little it might cost to do?
I mean, to your last point, guys, I always take literally 10%. Whatever an agent tells me, I'll start with 10% less. Once you know an agent, you can judge, you can start, you get a feel for, is he, right? Is he the more positive guy, over positive or not? Agents are, like any human being or any business person you meet and you want to do business with, you need to build some sort of relationship. Because I sometimes at the beginning put myself into shoes of the agent as well. How many people do they meet a day? Lots. They show a property to most probably 5-6 people, right? And they all come and right, and they also meet time wasters, right? And they also the cheeky offers, they're also and if you then in that bracket, it makes only cheeky offers, time is money for them as well. So you need to build a relationship with them. and also they need to understand how you work. To start with, I viewed a lot of things, and I will say I shouldn't have viewed, because they would have never worked as a deal, but they were useful to learn and also build relationship with the agent. And then, once you start talking and you're explaining what you're doing and then how it works, most agents get it, some don't. And then you have different classes of agents. I don't like to do Saturday viewings on the weekend, because I call them the door openers, right? The part-time clerk that just work a couple of hours on the weekend to open the door, show you around, and so on. I can't have a conversation with them about, what's the background of the vendor and so on. So, and you need that. So I want to work with the people who know the property, right? And I like to work with agents where they're very incentivized on selling, not like group incentives and stuff like that. So it's interesting. And you meet different, you have the youngsters, they started half a year ago, and then you have the experienced. And the best ones to work with, I found, are young, but not too short in the business. But if I have a sales negotiator that is 50 plus years old, it also is very difficult to work with them, because if they just do a job, they are not so motivated. They're happy with the salary. They've done it for 20 years and so on. I want the hungry ones, which want to earn or become a sales manager or want to become an investor themselves. This is where I can do deals. So you start classifying. So, yeah. You start. I start now segmenting my contacts. In terms of who is most likely the best one to work with.
Okay, great advice. And so let's look at a deal. Let's choose, because you were kind enough to send in a couple of deals. So do you have one that you would prefer to chat through first of all? Is there anyone that would be?
The probably the most meaty is the bungalow, the 4-bed bungalow. So.
Okay, so tell us about, well, first of all, whereabouts was this in the UK, and where is that in relation to where you live? So is it kind of on the doorstep?
It's in Southend-on-Sea, so it's about an hour and 10 away from me. So not quite the doorstep. It's sort of my maximum range, I would say.
And how did you find it? Because searching every property within an hour and 10 minutes drive is challenging. So how did this one stand out to you, or how did you find out about it?
It's actually through my mortgage broker, a mortgage broker I used before, and he came across that deal on it was a probate, and we started talking, about it, and then I ended up buying it.
And so it was a detached bungalow, kind of biggish bungalow, and a probate property. So would it be safe to assume it was kind of unloved for a few years, or needed
Smelly.
work doing to it? Okay.
Let's go. Let's
go there. Yeah.
Or unloved. Yeah, I would go a bit more than unloved. Smelly. So.
And so what was your vision of it, and why did this one stand out to say, okay, because I get the bungalow market. It's we've featured a lot over the years in YPN, because we can take a very tired product and repackage it for perhaps quite often for a kind of downsizing market, and someone who maybe they don't want the work, they want to move into a a property which is done for them, and sort of downsizing, not always financially in terms of the house, but downsizing into a smaller, more manageable property. So this one just screamed out to you that, okay, there's some value to add here and we can represent this then.
Exactly. That was it. It was because of the condition, and I think it was on the market for a little while before and fallen through once or twice, at least once, maybe I can't remember twice. And it was value to actually quite a bit of value by reconfiguring the inside of it. So, for example, it was a 3-bed. We made a 4-bed out of it because the garage was directly attached on the side, and to knock through the living room, basically a door on the side, very easy to do. We had 2 little box. No, it was actually it was a 4-bed. We left it as a 4-bed, but there were 2 little box rooms. So we knocked through that box room, made a bigger room and an ensuite, and gained the 4th bedroom back in the garage. So it stayed as a 4. There was also a tiny kitchen, but easy to knock through into the living room. So it has now a very nice big kitchen dining area. So more the modern style, and then outside there was a small driveway, so we could easily make extend that, so more cars can. So perfect for the size of it, also to accommodate what people then need. They have more, bigger houses, more people, bigger cars, more en-suites, more bathrooms, and so on.
So can you talk us through the kind of numbers on this one from a financial sense? What did it cost to buy? How much did you need to spend on it kind of to do the redevelopment, and some of the other costs involved as well? And what did you sell it for?
Actually, let me quickly. I'll send it to you right.
I've got a couple of them actually in front of me. So I've got the purchase. I've got the purchase price as 415,000.
Exactly.
And it said open market value of 520,000. So was that 520,000 when it would have been done up, or 520,000 then, but there was a motivated seller involved, or?
Yeah. So it was originally on the market for that amount. It sold and then fell through. Now you can argue, but that was like a year or two, I think 18 months before. So you can then always argue, was it also that was at the height of the market? So you can always debate, is it at that time a bit smaller? But yeah, roughly that was it. And then we spent, go on.
No, come on, no, you go ahead.
And then we spent about 100. What did I say? 120, I think, in the end.
Yeah, 127,000. Yeah.
Exactly, which also was, and that's why it's a good example. There wasn't a plan. The plan was only to spend about 110. But as we started, we noticed the roof was basically leaking much more, and in the end, originally the plan was just to repair a few tiles and so on, and we ended up basically doing the whole or 3/4 of the roof with new tiles. So that's also why this is quite a good example.
And I've got the sale price here at 650,000, and you made a 6-figure profit on this, over £100,000 profit on it. How did you get comfortable with the end valuation? So when you were kind of looking at this, going like, I think this is going to be worth north of 600,000, 650,000. How did you get comfortable with that number? Because I think it's the one that often we, as well as the cost of the refurb, it's how much is this thing really going to be worth? How did you get comfortable with that?
So, if we go quickly 2 agents back, right?
Yeah.
When I bought it, the agent said, because we sort of said, okay, look, if we plan and do everything, this is the plan. What do you think it's going to be worth, right? And the agents go, 750. And I was going, no way, because I was just doing the research in terms of sold prices before, using the different tools, the different websites, the area, and so on, square meter prices. I like to also use square meter prices. And then I always said, on a very good day, 700. If there's a very motivated, I love it, I want to be next to my daughter or whatever who lives close by. But that's just to the point of overvaluation and the agents wanting the business and so on. So, but straight answer, at the traditional methods, sold prices, historic from land registry, different websites, Supla. The difficulty with this one was there is the normal range of bungalows in that area is sort of up to 400. So this is more in the higher bracket because it's bigger and also the location is better. And that's why I like to use then sometimes square meter prices. They give you an indication. And then with these bigger bungalows, I look then also at 4-bed houses. So how much does a 4-bed house in the area cost in comparison? Because theoretically, it's a big bungalow, so it's not necessarily a downsizer. It could be also a family, right? Who lives, who needs the space. So that's why I also compare for these bigger properties, bungalows, also to the houses, and then semi-detached, detached, to get a sense, or getting sensitive where the price could be, and then asking a few agents, of course, as well. But as I said, everyone told me 700. That was the lowest any agent said. And I was thinking, and I don't think 700 on a very lucky day. So.
And were your end buyers the people you had envisaged? So we talked just now about people downsizing, maybe moving from a house to a bungalow. But you've mentioned that a 4-bedroom bungalow can be attracted to anybody who's looking for a 3 or 4-bedroom house. So who were your end buyers for this?
And that was a funny one because for a while I thought. For a while, we thought we sell it to a social housing provider who wanted to use it to put, I think, also pensioners with disabilities in there. And I thought, oh my God, that's definitely not the customer I was envisaging. But in the end, we didn't. For whatever reason, they decided then not to pursue. But in the end, it was like an elderly couple with grandchildren and so on who obviously a certain amount of money that bought it.
Okay, so kind of that market that we described then.
Yeah.
You mentioned working with kind of private investors and bringing private investors into deals as well. So I wanted to talk about that kind of outside of this specific deal. How have you found that? You come from a finance background, so I would imagine it's easier to present the numbers than some people might. Other people might try and get people to buy into like the I don't know the less tangible aspects of the project and just get excited by being in property. Is it just that you're speaking the same language as people who want to invest in property and they're just looking for a return? How does that work for you?
It's pretty much bang on, right? I think my background in some ways buys me a certain credibility, right? So people think, he knows the numbers, what he's talking about. But I mean, investors come in all, like buyers come in all shapes and forms, right? And some have have various motives in terms of what they want to get out of it. From, yes, I just want to earn some money. Property is a good, safe business. I can, and others down to, I want to get involved, right? So it's not always. The objectives can be. Primary objective is always earn some money, right? But there are some investors have also secondary objectives, and some of them are sort of almost on equal footing, right? Which is where you have to be careful, right? Because at the end of the day, you can't delay a project, and you need to move on. But what I found from an investment perspective, even with professional investors, everyone can relate to property because everyone lives in one, right? So it's not other investments can be a bit like a startup, can be a bit to explain difficult, but people go, what is this? Property everyone can relate to, which is good. On the other hand, everyone seems to be an expert sometimes in property. And that's where when working with an investor, roles and responsibilities are very important. What do you bring to the table and what do you want to get out of it? And what I bring to the table is a bit more clear from my perspective, but is very important. And I think I expanded a bit on your question is, what does an investor want to get out of it?
And your role and responsibility is, I find the project, I manage the project, I deal with the headaches along the way, and there are always headaches along the way, and I will keep you as informed as you wish to be, I imagine. But it's interesting you talk about that kind of defining the roles, because I guess what you don't want is someone else who's got an opinion or, thinks we should put a different kitchen in or wants an involvement in it other than, the financial and update bit. Could you envisage that being a problem, I guess?
Yes. If you know the person and you worked before, of course, if they're I don't know, if they're an architect, then that could be actually value add and very helpful, right? If it's a new relationship, then you asking for trouble because someone said, no, that kitchen, no, the new at the moment modern is black kitchen, right? And then you go, yeah, but who wants to live, So that's why I'm very clear about, with investors, two things are very important in my eyes: roles and responsibilities. Actually, three things: how you structure the deal, loan or roles and responsibilities, and risks. So everyone likes to see the 20%. You do and say, oh yeah, there's 20% potential, 20% profit. Yes, but there's also risks, right? And the risk is the roof collapses, and then you then also explain how you mitigate or try to mitigate those risks. But it's very good to be upfront with investors about these three things. And if they buy into that, then normally it makes it simpler, right?
Okay. And so let's talk about another project, and this was another bungalow actually. I don't know which of these came first, and I don't know how you kind of honed in on this sort of bungalow strategy. So tell us about this one. So did this come before the one we spoke about previously, or was this?
Actually, that came before. Similar sort of buyer scenario. Different location, different price point, so more very clear what to do with it. Had a potential a little bit land on the side, which could have worked out with some land from someone else to build another house. There was a gamble we took, but it didn't pay out. There could have been a very good deal or an exceptional, but and other than that is it's a chalet bungalow, and it was a free bed. It was a free bed. We made a 4-bed out of it because the bathroom upstairs had a window. So there were 3 bedrooms upstairs, 1 downstairs, very big master bedroom, and smaller second, and a box and a room that size of a big box room. There was a bathroom, and there was downstairs a bathroom as well. So what we did with because the chalet bungalow, so what we did is the bathroom had a window. We made in the big bedroom an ensuite. So not to lose that on top, but the bathroom upstairs became a bedroom, number 4. And then downstairs basically stayed as it is. So the play here was to go from a 3 to a 4-bed, or 3 plus a box room, which modern day either you can be an office, or a playroom, or for a small kid, a little nursery or something like that.
And was this again the kind of tired bungalow coming back onto the market, smelly, or similar situation?
Smelly, also smelly. Very, very smelly, to be honest. One of these things where you go, how can people live like that? But I'm not here to judge.
Again, selling to a similar market again, the kind of downsizing.
No, family. So there was some upsides actually. Gentleman and wife who just had their second child, I think. Or the second child was on the way when we started, and it was born when we finished, something like that. I can't remember exactly.
And how are you finding things in the kind of current climate? I hear lots of people saying online, it's really tough to sell a property right now. Are you finding the same, or do you feel that, and how will your business and your strategy of kind of flipping properties at the moment adapt in what is definitely a kind of more challenging market?
I would say it's very interesting to see very price sensitive. So if you are on the upper end, as long as you're not in the luxury or upper end market, very difficult. I think also the average when I look at sold values in areas, they all tend to be at the average, what the main stock is. So out of the normal type properties, especially when you go up, when you go down, not so much. You have to be very careful with the price point. And because of that, there's lots of on offer, right? And people start reducing if they are on bridge. Especially some investors, they're on bridges, so they have to sell. And then it's tough. You have to. That's why developing it to the right price or refurbishing it to the right price is, I think, very, very important. And buying at the right price, very important.
So that's influencing what you will be prepared to pay for a property. Obviously, at the moment, that you're kind of going back and having conversations, saying, well, like things are difficult at the moment. I know you want to achieve this, but that's not realistic. Those are the sorts of conversations you're having now. Or?
Yeah. And what I also find is that the owner occupiers are willing to go into more smelly properties these days than maybe before, because with the view, I'll pay a little bit less, I can afford it, I live in it, and I'll do it by it. So very often when I lose out to owner occupiers, where I go, really? Because it's also in the price segment where you say, okay, they most probably can't afford to have two properties, right? Basically live in the old, buy the new one, right? And do it up and then move. It's more the scenario, buy it, move in, and do it up while you're in. So which then means either I have to go more smelly, so it's kind of unlivable, or there's a scenario where it has to go quick, right? And mortgage can't be involved. So it's one in certain areas. I definitely see that trend that people are prepared to go more smelly and do work themselves, or while they're living there, which I think if you haven't done that before, you're asking for a divorce or trouble, basically. So
I'm sure a whole lot of tension, a whole lot of family tension, definitely. So, so with the sort of flipping side of the business, is there a kind of, I'm sure there is, a sort of business plan saying, well, this is the number of properties, or this is the amount of profit that we're looking to make within a 12-month period? I'm interested to know what that looks like, and then how that translates to. And so because of that, I need to go and view X number of properties, or I need to talk to so many agents. Because when I've spoken to Susanna before, she gives some pretty exact formulas on these are the number of people you need to talk to. This is what needs to happen. So I wondered how that translates to your business.
Mm-hmm. And that is actually, I found that when I started working with her, quite helpful, because if you haven't done it professionally or as a business, you don't have that experience, right, of basically doing that. And it's not wrong, it's actually statistically it works, right? So you need to talk to a certain amount of people, and you need to offer on a certain amount to be successful. And sometimes when I see stories of people get into properties, and the first property was the £100,000 deal, then I say, well done. But I think you had a lot of luck finding the right property as your first one, right? I didn't have that luck, so I do need to put the effort in, and so I found that helpful, and I experienced the same thing. The more I view, the more I talk to people, the more opportunities I create, and 90% of the opportunities what someone thinks is an opportunity, I say no, is not. But I always go, if you have a success rate, or let's say you have and even if it's just 1%, right? If you look at 10 properties, or you look at 100 properties, the likelihood you do more is very simple. And I actually had the chance to talk to Simon Zucchi. He's also, I think, one of your frequent, contributors. And he also says the same thing, right? The successful people who doing lots of deals are often a lot of deals. Is this when you, especially in the flipping business, where you want to buy something cheaper than what most people want to sell it for, you need to find the right condition and the right person in the right situation that is willing to sell cheaper. And the more projects you look at, statistically, you just increase your likelihood. I'm always gutted when or in the beginning, I was always gutted. I said, perfect project I found, very good. I just negotiate 10% down and I'm fine. And then I just get told, no, just sold. Right? And also, the longer you look at this, if it comes back, the agent might remember you. You bid on it before. It has fallen through. Are you still interested? So, and that's in the flipping business also, I think, very important. I almost buy only properties that have fallen through at least once or twice, because before, agents put so many big numbers in people's heads that you can't buy at the right price.
And it's just resetting that expectation as well, I guess. Their circumstances have perhaps moved on a little bit. They're going to be a little bit more motivated. So let's talk about the kind of, you're doing incredibly well on the kind of flipping side of things. And there's this other plan as well to kind of build the portfolio alongside that. What does that look like? Have you got a kind of picture of these are the types of properties that I'm going to be buying? This is the return on any capital left in. This is what I want to achieve, and for what reason. So for some people, it's, do you know what? I want a absolutely low hassle, no headache property that sits there. Other people are looking for a higher return, happy to put in a bit more time on the kind of management side of things. What will that business look like for you?
I have a vague idea. I not yet 100%, and I'll tell you for two reasons. First reason is I'm very focused of getting that flipping business now, that boat or that car up and running and moving, and I don't want to. And that takes a lot of energy and time, because you don't have big teams around you, right? And you also you build everything, right? You build your teams, and then you change teams and so on. And you recruit investors, you do everything. So I'm very focused and determined on this one. And most probably to the holding, I come in a year or two. Now, the market in a year or two also will dictate a little bit what makes sense. So for now, will be focusing on, my idea is to blocks of lands, mixed use, and small medium portfolios, which depending on the area might make sense, because I also got in touch now with people who sell whole portfolios. So those will be then the kind of a bit more meaty, but then also hopefully with economies of scale and opportunity. Because if I then, I have a block of flats, let's say 10 flats, and I can reconfigure them or refurbish them and so on, and increase the value or do the title split, then, there's economies of scale again. Back to our argument, small projects, big projects, and risk and reward. I also quite like mixed use. I looked at a few numbers where you keep the commercial on the bottom, and you do something with the top bit. So, but they're not just one building, then sort of 500 to 1,000 square meters or something like that. So.
And coming from kind of corporate life as well, I imagine that you would have kind of built teams behind you as well to kind of do day-to-day functions. Is that something you envisage doing within the flipping business, or do you see it being kind of you intensive, kind of ongoing?
No, I want to get as quickly as possible to a stage where I can start almost not outsource, but also get some help, because I'm a little. Hopefully, I come to very soon at a stage where I'm the limiting factor, because I only have so much time, right? And if you want to scale and create a company, then either you accept that limitation and say, this is now the size I can operate, and I'm happy with that, right? Or, and that's I want to operate at a larger scale in terms of number of projects, and then I want to get someone in. So I'm always keen some of the agents I work with, I have already in the back of my mind, hopefully, in a year time, I can offer you a job, basically, as my head of procurement or whatever, and then build an ecosystem with the processes I have created. As I look, this is, or just admin who then coordinates the process and say, so absolutely yes, I want to, as soon as possible, be able to build a team.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, that, isn't it? Because it can be very you intensive and time intensive, and if you're taken out the picture, if you go away on holiday, or if you're whatever, if you get, heaven forbid, you get poorly, but that business can stop really easily, and corporate businesses kind of build a structure around that. But I'm not sure that we as individual kind of property traders are as good at that necessarily. But it's interesting that you're having thoughts at the moment to the sort of head of acquisitions of people who are out there right now at the moment. They know what a deal looks like. They know they can bring it to the table because they're already doing it as an estate agent.
I think that's the important is, where do you want to get to? What is your long-term plan? If you, and it's anything in life, in any job, if you just drift into something and you keep drifting, you can end up anywhere, right? If you know roughly where you want to get to, or have a long-term aim, it's much easier to focus and to get there. It's my philosophy, at least. So
it does sound like you've kind of you invest and buy with intent. These are when you're looking at properties, you've got a very clear idea of the potential for them, rather than this, well, hopefully something will come along and it will be just right. And I think that happens in the early days, doesn't it? You said you looked at a lot of properties.
Yeah,
maybe you have to go through that to kind of understand what a deal looks like. So I was really interested as well, as I said, Susie's a good friend of mine. I was interested to sort of find out how working with her has helped sort of shape the business. What does she kind of bring to it that you feel that you might have struggled to kind of get to grips with if you've just been working in isolation?
Mm-hmm. I think the main thing, and that's why I choose her, because I also worked with a few other people before, is you don't know what you don't know, and that's very dangerous, because a teacher once said to me, which always stuck to me: a little bit of knowledge is dangerous. Because you think you know, but you don't. And in property, it's dangerous because you think this is a good property and you buy it, and then you're stuck with it. And if you then discover what you wanted to do doesn't work, or there's a problem, it takes you a lot of time to correct it. And also, she expanded my horizon tremendously, what is all involved, right? So health and safety. I mean, I think a lot of people take a lot of risk doing extensive projects, not securing the site or having any risk assessment or whatever, and they're just lucky nothing goes wrong. And the process thinking. So I think to look at it as a business and those elements which are missing, this is really where her value comes. But also, the second one is reprogramming from corporate to property world. Because I don't want to sound very, but there's a lot of in property. You also deal with different kinds of people than in the corporate, especially if you work in big corporates, right? Where everyone is a specialist in that area, been there for a long time or was educated to do that, and and so on. in property, you have a lot of generalists. People come from all works of life, and then you have to and you have to work with them, right? I think agents are a good example, right? I can become an agent tomorrow, right? If I want to. So, and helping to reprogram myself, I can't talk like a CFO with a 20-year-old agent that came out of I don't know, just out of university, and we had many conversations just about this soft aspects around how do you engage and and so on. So that's where she helps me tremendously in terms of what do I need to look at and how do I need to look at it with my background. So.
And did you find yourself, or do you find yourself kind of bringing deals to say, hey, look, I'm looking at this. I want a second set of eyes on this. Am I thinking the right things? And if that were the case in the early days, did you find her kind of saying, yeah, not that one, or that's not going to work for this reason? Because I think we're all looking for like a second experienced set of eyes on our projects. Did you find yourself kind of doing that?
Actually, less, to be honest. Because because of my background, right, and working with numbers, I discuss deals more from an aspect, have you looked at, there could be this wrong, and have you looked at this, the other day we were talking about party wall and, and mortgage implications, less so about, is this a good deal or and so on. And that's maybe just me. We kind of work more on, what to do and how to do it. Yeah.
And is the intention to kind of carry on with corporate life, or do you envisage yourself kind of taking a step out of corporate life into full-time in property? Where are you aiming for?
That's sort of a little bit my intention, at the moment. So I have sometimes these moments where I miss the corporate life, right? If things are not structured, and so I go, but yeah, the intention is to make this a proper business, basically. So.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. And so, as we come towards the end of this, I was interested to ask. You said earlier on that you start work early in the morning. You're very ruthlessly efficient with your time. And that's a trait and that's the trait I see with lots of people who are successful and juggling either more than one business or, a demanding career and property at the same time. Are you able to kind of enjoy the freedom aspects that we are quite often seeking from property yet? Juggling a family, business, property at the same time, or is it kind of all guns pointed at this right now for a period of time? Do you get any work-life balance, I guess, is my short version of the question.
Yeah. No, I do. I could more, but I also, by nature, a bit of a workaholic. And once I get into something, I get like a bit like with a dog and a bone. But on the other hand, I much more do school runs now than I used to before, and I stopped a little bit working. I don't work on Sundays anymore. I always used to work on Sundays as well. I stopped doing that, and I also Saturdays just in the morning, an hour or so, and that's it. And then it's really I do things with my wife and my daughter at the weekend. So the answer is yes, I do. So
Good. And well, that's great to hear, because it would be awful to hear that, yeah, no, I just work all the time. And um, I also wanted to ask, like, do you find yourself, do people in corporate life know what you do outside of corporate life in property as well? Or is that something you keep very separate? Or is it, is it helpful for other people to understand? And have you sort of found investors for the property side of things from corporate life?
It's I keep it a bit separate, to be honest. But I've always been a bit of, life, work is work, and life is life. It's a tricky one, and I think it's more personal choice than anything. I think maybe also if you in a certain position, then it's generally anyway a bit more tricky, and you have to be a bit more careful. With the company, what's been talked about, and so on. And if you're in a director position, and people love also to talk more about you than not, right? And so it's a bit of a balancing act. I have to say sometimes I need to. But it's more of my personal choice of keeping things separate.
I can imagine it must be really difficult as well, because you're at a senior position, and it would be very easy for someone else to either feel kind of jealous of that, or just be looking at that going, well, hang on a minute, what's he really doing with his time if he's doing all this property stuff as well? And so drawing a line there where maybe people that you know and are very comfortable with know what you're doing, and others, but not openly speaking about it, perhaps.
Exactly, and you might go on holiday, right? Or you take a day off, and all of it. Yeah, he's most probably doing his property stuff, right? He's not working for the company, and so. Well, at the end of the day, what I do with my free time is my personal choice, right? And that I get up at 5 o'clock, right, and do some property is my choice. If you get up at 9 o'clock and go to work, it's your choice, right? But that's not how people think, then the jealousy element and the comes into. But on the other hand, I put the time and the work in, right? And especially people, I'll be now a bit not controversial, a bit provocative, people who want the instant success, that which are the people who don't understand how it really works and the effort you need to put in. And consistently successful people, what they have to do that, because I always remember that famous actor once said it took me 10 years to become an overnight success.
Yeah.
Right. So, and that's it. And thereby you have to be a bit careful, because most people want to be an overnight success, want to win the lottery, no effort, very quick, lots of money. And unfortunately, it doesn't happen very often. So
I think we don't talk about that enough in property, and certainly if we are consuming, like, let's say, the Instagram style content, everything looks really easy and very very fast. And one of the things that definitely YPN has always kind of talked about is that actually success isn't always guaranteed, and that deals take time and effort and a huge amount of putting yourself out of your own comfort zone as well. And I don't think we talk about enough about that sometimes. And we see people come in, and I don't know what happens exactly. I think they go on one course, and they think, because I've been on one course, success is now going to happen. It's like, well, no, you've learned the tools, and now the real work starts. And we both know that you can make very large sums of money in actually quite a short space of time sometimes, but that goes with it a lot of hard work and pulling a team together and taking risk and mitigating risk as well at the same time. And
it's not
it's really nice.
And it's not the norm,
Oh,
right?
no. Yeah.
So, and I think sometimes, sometimes people show this, right? But they created that because they've done 20 deals before, right? Mm. And was probably, I always compare it a little bit when people talk about their stock investments, right? They always say, "Oh, I made so much money on this deal and this trade." No one ever says, "Oh, I lost the money on other 10 trades," right? But that's life, right? That's you're not always hit the jackpot. But the more you try, the more you do, the more you put effort in, is my belief. The more you almost force your luck, right? So
it's the same as everything, isn't it? The more you put in, the more you get out of it, without a doubt. But success, that kind of overnight success type thing, I've never seen it happen. And I've been doing these types of interviews, meeting other investors and investing myself for 18 years now, and every single one, there's a lot of work behind the scenes, and I think it's important to acknowledge that. And I quite often use this phrase that when we do these interviews, it's ordinary people who achieve extraordinary things. But I think that's true. But I think the other bit that's true is it's ordinary people putting in extraordinary amounts of effort quite often to achieve extraordinary things. So maybe I'm going to amend my slogan to fit that.
Marcus, that's true.
I was going to say, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. We had a couple of false starts trying to record this with some technical issues, and I'm so glad it's worked today. It's been a genuine pleasure. So thank you for joining us, and we look forward to catching up with you again soon.